This is Black Music Scene, brought to you by the Black Orchestral Network, an archive for Black classical music, connecting the hands that carried us to the voices that will shape our future. These are conversations about craft, legacy, and the work that carries the music forward. This is Black Music Scene, cultivating community, lifting our voices, and telling our stories. I'm so excited to be here with both of you and have the opportunity to hear your story, to have your story and your sound and experiences shared with our audience, and walk along this sort of adventure, this tale that you both individually have woven. My first question, and maybe we can go in whatever order you might choose, whoever feels encouraged to go first. I would love to know, what are some of your earliest musical memories?
Well, I do remember we had friends of the family, our parents, and we would visit their houses, and there almost always was a piano in the home. You know, our parents were born in 1913 and 1915, so they were born before radio even. So the entertainment center in these even lower middle class and even below that homes was the piano. So I definitely remember pounding on a piano, couldn't read any music, but I'd get away from the older folks and have fun playing the piano.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, and that was Smith's house, as a matter of fact. You remember that? Yeah, that was my recollection as well. You should also know that I know that our mother, when she was growing up, had a piano in the house, and family lore says that Earl Garner used to come over to the house and play piano for parties and things like that at the house.
Wow!
So there was music. Our parents did appreciate music very much, but we were very much working class, and there certainly was not a piano in our house. There certainly was not the opportunity to play an instrument. We did have records. We were introduced to music through records. I remember very distinctly a young person's album of the instruments of the orchestra,
right?
Which I'm sure Bill remembers right. It happens that Mitch Miller was the oboist on that. Exactly. I talked to Mitch about that one time, and he remembered that as well. But that's how we came to know the instruments of the orchestra. And we both, I'm sure, were thinking at the same time. You have to remember, Bill and I are only a year apart as far as age. And we thought it would be wonderful to someday play one of these wonderful things.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
But we were at best lower middle class. You know, Ralph, sometimes I wonder, what kind of money do we have when we couldn't afford a TV?
Right.
Until we were 4 and 5, when 90% of America already had one. I think there was a small radio in the kitchen. You're right. We finally got a phonograph player with a 12 record set. And I remember one of our parents told me there was a baton that came with the kit. And they tell me I was like, waving around in the air. But it's amazing. We can still sing some of those songs and remember some of those selections. So that was seemingly an innocuous gift, but it helped to change our lives.
Amazing. We went to an elementary school in a suburb of Pittsburgh, over in the all-black corner of this suburb. And for years, this school was the forgotten child of the school district. There were, I think, about 10 other elementary schools in the school district, and ours was the only one that did not have instrumental music. This is the middle of the 60s, the height of the civil rights movement. And at that time, somebody had the presence of mind to say, why aren't these kids over here getting to play instruments? Well, once again, at the very beginning of 5th grade year for me, 6th for Bill, somebody showed up and said, we're going to start an instrumental music program. They started the band first, and Bill started on
the clarinet.
On the same day, I started on trumpet.
The trumpet?
Trumpet, absolutely. And maybe 2 weeks, 1 week, whatever number of weeks later, they started the string program.
Yeah.
And that morning, Bill got up and trotted off to school. And Lord only knows why he picked the viola.
I'll tell you why. I didn't know what a viola was.
Okay. Yeah.
And it tied into what Mom told me. If you have an option of projects, always pick the most difficult one. So to challenge you, I guess that's what she meant. So I didn't know what a viola was. Sounds like a challenge.
It led to a lifetime of viola jokes, right?
Yeah.
Well, anyway, that morning I slept in. I missed going in, and by the time I was woken and told to get out of bed and get up to the school, the only instrument left was the cello.
No.
However, the person, the teacher of this class, Eugene Reichenfeld, said, looked down at me, the little boy, and said, "Little boy, let me see your hand." So I went like this, and he said, "Cello."
Wow. Just like that.
Yeah. Yeah. I still very, very much remember him handing the cello to me. And I have to skip about 45 years later on. I was with the Cleveland Orchestra on tour, and we happened to be in China.
Mm-hmm.
And we took a side trip one day out of Beijing to the Great Wall of China. And as I was standing on the Great Wall of China, on the other side of the world from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I had a flashback moment to the man handing me the cello for the first time. And it was as just like as if the man was standing right next to me. That this person, Eugene Reichenfeld, was the reason that Bill and I are musicians.
Wow.
And he was a Jewish gentleman, well known in the Pittsburgh area. He was the conductor of at least 2 civic orchestras. And so I saw him conduct, and somehow I had the idea as his viola student eventually of maybe, even though I was terribly introverted and shy, trying to conduct. So it was just wonderful chain of coincidences that led me to a viola teacher who was also a conductor, who thought maybe I had a spark in me. And one day he said, "I want you to conduct one of my orchestras in a rehearsal." And I said, "But I don't know how to conduct." And he said, "Conductors are born and not made."
Wow.
I know what that means now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, Ralph? Because
absolutely,
it's just, you can find them the genius pianists, but they'll never do what I did in 6 months. So I went home to my parents. I said to Dad, "I'm going to conduct." He said, "You can't conduct." I said, "I know that, but he's going to put me on the podium." And Dad said, "Well, that's the way he learned how to swim." His dad threw him in the YMCA pool and said, "Swim, boy."
Mm-hmm.
And so I conducted this rehearsal, and all I can remember from it was I couldn't stop smiling at the end. It was my light bulb over the head moment.
Wow. And was that age 14, 15? How old were you at that point?
That would have been 14.
Wow. Amazing. I think about what it must have been like to know, hey, we can't afford a TV, or maybe we only have one radio, but I still want to do this. I still want to play. Talk to me a little bit about what it meant to dream, to think about, to imagine playing an instrument, in that sort of desire that you had as you were really getting into being musicians.
Oh, that's a very complicated question, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It gets right down to the inner makings of a person. Just the joy of making a sound. The first moment you touch the instrument and you've made a sound, as scratchy or horrible as it may be, and I remember Bill squeaking on the clarinet for a couple of weeks before he got a sound out of the thing. But this, just the sensation of making a sound, and then the next week the sound is a little bit better, and the week after that still, and that's the whole nature of what we do. It's this constant learning process, and it's fun. Bottom line, it's incredibly fun to play an instrument. They call it playing an instrument. They don't call it working an instrument.
That's funny.
Yeah.
Amen.
So as you work harder, practice more, you get better. You get strokes from getting better. People say, "Hey, you're really improving. Hey, that really sounds good." which feeds your ego a little bit more. You work a little bit harder, things get easier, you get better, and it keeps rolling like that. And it's a process that hopefully never ends. You're just constantly learning, improving, discovering. That's why I still practice all the time, because I just love the process of working, of learning how to do something better. Even if it's that minuscule toothpick-sized bit of progress you've made for the day, but it's progress.
Yes.
And David, I had 2 light bulb over the head moments. One was, and I think it was middle school, so that would have been 9th grade, when it's torturous to play an instrument, as you remember, but then you finally have enough facility, and all of a sudden one day in middle school I said, wait a minute, I can express my emotions with these tones. No one told me that. I had never thought of it, but now I had enough technique to have fun with it, to express myself. The other was, Ralph, we were in the Wilkinsburg Junior Civic Symphony, and we were playing the March of the Meistersingers by Wagner.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Right. That 2-page arrangement. And so all of a sudden, I'm having literally, for the first and only time in my life, an out-of-body experience. I'm soaring around the room. So you don't forget that. If it had happened in math class or me in gym class, my life would have had a different direction. But you don't forget that calling, that annunciation moment that tells you, wow, this is your bliss. So from that point on, I just dived into it. And Reichenfeld gave me books and orchestral scores. And finally, he let me conduct his adult orchestra. I made my debut at age 15, conducting an adult orchestra. Now, I've never known a 15-year-old that I would let conduct a paying audience. But who knows why there was a certain facility. And mainly, I've been able to be a conductor for this reason only. I'm always the minister of music. I don't care about myself. I'm there to promote the music and to make sure it sounds as great as it is. And so I've rarely been nervous or anxious. And I certainly, of course, when you're 15, right, you don't have any stage fright. But that was an important moment in my life, obviously, to conduct adults and to get a standing ovation. And of course, the media loved the idea of a black 15-year-old conductor.
Yeah.
So I gave my first interview, at age 15. And Ralph, I remember in one interview, I described our family as poor.
Yeah, our parents didn't like that.
No, Mom went nuts. And as I recall, she never confronted me. I think you remember some of this. She would tell you or Dad, you tell Billy. But I heard I shouldn't have called our family poor. But heck, I'm saying we don't have much of anything.
One thing that I keep coming down to is that even though I myself was making tremendous progress on the cello, I was playing a school-owned instrument until I was 16 years old. It wasn't until we got to that point where we managed to scratch together enough money, a couple $100 really, to buy an instrument. I was borrowing instruments from my teacher, from the school, from whomever or wherever, in order to do this thing that was clear that I loved. And was making progress on. Bill talked about those light bulb moments. For me, and Bill will remember this, we were doing our youth orchestra. We were both members of the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony. We were doing a performance of the Brahms Requiem. And I'm sure it wasn't a very great performance. But during that concert, I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. I can't imagine doing anything else besides this. And it's still one of my absolute favorite pieces. And I still have those moments whenever we get to the points that moved me. And it moves me still. And I realize that, yeah, I made the right choice at age 14.
Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And I remember we were on tour with the American Youth Symphony, the first Currys to go to Europe. We were with the American Youth Symphony, where I guess ages were what, Ralph? 14 to 18?
18, right.
Okay. And one of the conductors loved music, and that was James Patterson. And every concert on the tour had the Brahms Academic Festival Overture. And I still have tears when I think of a viola section on the 3rd page that I live for each night. So again, if this had happened for me reading Moby Dick, my life would have had a different direction.
Yeah.
And we were both making this journey at exactly the same time.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that Bill's successes fed mine and vice versa. We were both aware of this. We were trying to play duets at home. I don't know if we should talk about that at all.
Would love to hear about it. I would love to hear about it.
The Christmas Carol moment. We're reading from piano reductions of Christmas carols. And neither one of us, I mean, we're still very much young, very young students. We couldn't read clefs at all.
Mm.
And so Bill was probably playing, he could play alto clef, I could play bass clef, but we're trying to play these piano parts and obviously playing in different keys.
Right.
But we thought it sounded terrific
And
at the
Mom
time.
said something's off.
Something's off.
Oh my gosh.
I wish we had that recording. We recorded it.
Yes, we did. I still have the tape downstairs someplace.
Oh,
Yeah.
come on now.
But I don't have a reel-to-reel tape recorder, so
Okay,
it's
I'll buy you one.
lost for the ages, probably.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, I'm sitting here having an amazing time because the whole reason that I got into classical music in the first place is because of my older brother, Ryan Norville. He's a flute player and he's about 4 years older than me. And, everything he did as a child, I wanted to do, and I wanted to do better. And so we had this amazing dynamic of he blazed a trail and I was able to figure out how to walk in rhythm with him or diverge and do my own thing. I would love to hear about if there were any moments for you where you, as you developed together, started to realize, one brother does this, the other brother does this, and these are our respective paths. These are our respective directions that we want to go. Was there any moments that felt that way, or did you not really think about it that way?
Well, they say those that play tennis, and Ralph, you play tennis, it's most fun when you're playing with someone that's good.
Mm-hmm.
And Ralph was so good at everything he did that, of course, I wanted to keep up with that. I remember my parents told me, they just said that you got the highest IQ score in the history of Lincoln Park Elementary School.
Wow.
The same as Obama's. I'm not a genius. And then next year, this rascal beat me out by 2 points. So, and his grades were better. So that, I don't think, Ralph, I don't think there was any nasty competitiveness. But
Never.
yeah. I was look, you hear stories about big brothers being awful and all that. I respected Ralph. You couldn't help but respect him.
He still beat me up.
Oh, man.
That's what he says. That's wrong.
You sure you still want two brothers on the...
I love it.
And Mom and Dad said the problem is, they were told by child psychologists, if the boys are born a year close to each other, there's going to be some nastiness, some competitiveness. But that didn't happen with us. Like I said, he always got better grades. He was a better cello player than I was a viola player. But after a while, I was so in love with the idea of conducting. And another out-of-body experience was I knew Beethoven's Fifth somewhat by the time I was 15. And then one day on KDKA-FM, I heard Otto Klemperer do Beethoven's Fifth. And I got mad because this was incredibly great and noble and majestic, all those other, pretentious words. But I said, no, I want to be the person that can make the music as great as possible. So for me, very seriously, it's always been an act of service.
Yeah.
From that moment.
Yeah.
And one of the things that really always excited me about music was the community of music itself. As we joined the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony, which was a very, very high-level youth orchestra, a whole new world opened. I still get shivers thinking about our first moments of playing in that Peer Gynt second suite, first suite, whichever it was. Second suite. Thank you very much. But it's still the feeling of finally feeling as if I belong somewhere.
Wow.
being someplace where people around me have the same interests, are doing it for the same reasons, are excited about this community of music making. And as you know, the act of chamber music, orchestral playing, whatever, is life changing. That you're making music and communicating using no words.
Yeah.
Very true. David, we grew up, you may have already said, Ralph, in an all-black community, and the school was an all-black elementary school. And then we were bused to a junior high school, Seneca Junior High School. Mind you, these were the children of a white flight community.
Okay.
And there was terrible racial feelings bubbling beneath the surface. Finally, in my senior year, there was a race riot in the high school. So I don't remember, mind you, I'm introverted and shy anyway, but I remember on the bus, we were so scared going from an all-black school to virtually an all-white school. So fitting in, look, we as intellectuals, I mean, I didn't fit in. And again, yeah, do I like that word intellectuals? No. But can we use Du Bois's term, the talented 10th? No, that's also offensive. But in the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony, a lot of the kids were Jewish, and they had another kind of sense about being a minority. So we bonded with those kids really well, and they became lifelong friends, some of them. So, you find your peeps, your tribe, in the debating society or the football team or whatever. Ours, we felt we belonged to something, was the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony.
Wow. Yeah. There's so much here. I mean, thinking about this act of music making in community with people, to me, I always think about, this act of music making as an act of love, an act of connection, an act of togetherness. And to find your people, to find your tribe is a feeling like no other. And it just reminds me of so many different, conversations that I've had with people on this platform where they have similarly echoed like finding place and finding home in some of the best music that the world has to offer, with some of the best people too. So that's just significant. I want to move forward a little bit and ask a question that I frequently ask to my guests. Throughout your career, what stands out? Let's say now moving forward, professional career. So maybe it could be including college or just like beginning of your professional career onward. But I'm wondering, what are some of your most significant musical memories? Like, what are some of the things that like you think back and you think, wow, that's a performance that I would love to relive once again. That's a performance that everybody should experience. What comes to mind when I bring that up?
Well, for me, it's complicated because there are so many great performances that you participate in during the course of that journey. However, as you skip forward to the actual professional life, when I was a senior at the Cleveland Institute of Music, I was bold enough to audition for the New York Philharmonic. My teacher said, "You're ready for this." I thought he was nuts, but they managed to talk me into this audition because in those days it was invitation only. Yet somehow they managed to say, "You got to hear this kid." So I went and played, made finals, and Boulez Pierre Boulez, who was the music director of the New York Philharmonic at the time, did not choose me for that job. But because the word came out, I was just too green. I mean, I was a senior in college. I was green. There's no doubt about it. But at the same time, this was the time when truly affirmative action was being really strongly pushed. And a new program called the Music Assistance Fund was started out of the offices of the New York Philharmonic. And they were starting a fellowship program which put one African-American player in a string section of a major orchestra for a period of a year or 2 years or something like that. And the person who was head of that at the time approached Boulez and said, "We have this program. your problem with this kid was that he was green. Would you like to give him some experience?
Mm.
Well, I said, but of course.
Mm.
And the 2 months later, I'm playing in the New York Philharmonic. That's what I would like to hear again, was that first performance, the first rehearsal of that first performance, really, and saying, this is what I've had in my ear for all this time.
Yes.
Finally, this is what it feels like.
Yeah. David, did I send you material on my very first job in Richmond, Virginia?
No, but I believe I read a little bit about it.
So Ralph and I both left college in our senior year.
Okay.
And so I left Oberlin in October to audition for a job as assistant conductor of the Richmond, Virginia Symphony.
Mm-hmm.
They offered me the job. I went back to Oberlin and I asked my conducting teacher, what do you think? He said, well, I've had 10 conducting students in 10 years and none of them are working as a conductor. So that was interesting to me. So I took the job. I get to Richmond, and the executive director, who I'm going to have an interview with in 2 weeks, she said, we're not going to offer you a title. What do you mean? Because your predecessor also was a student from Oberlin, and the board of directors said he didn't work out very well.
Mm.
And so this didn't sound right to me, and it wasn't right. When I left Richmond, somebody said, I think you should know what happened, Bill. The board of directors flipped out when they heard the French conductor and the liberal executive director had hired their first black staff conductor, this in Richmond, in the capital of the Confederacy.
I see.
So I had moved all my stuff. I had left my college degree dreams behind. And I was conducting the chamber orchestra. They never let me near the big orchestra. Then, at the end of the season, the conductor, who I really loved, a very gracious fellow, Jacques Udman, still alive, was conducting the dress rehearsal on a Sunday night of Beethoven Symphony No. 9. Very energetic guy, probably about 45. He always stood, but on this rehearsal, he was seated. And I went home that night around 10 o'clock, and I said, well, he looked okay. Didn't look like he was sick. But if he were to be indisposed, then probably I'll be up to bat.
Mm-hmm.
So around 11 o'clock at night, I started studying Beethoven Symphony No. 9. And then probably around midnight, I said, this is crazy. Okay, next morning, 8:15, ring, ring, ring. Good morning, Bill. How well do you know Beethoven Symphony No. 9?
Mm.
The conductor had gotten kidney stone attack during the night.
Wow.
And she said, have you conducted it before? Well, of course. Yeah, right. No. So again, I found out years later, the board of directors, no way in hell was going to let me conduct. So among other options was the music director of the National Symphony in Washington, D.C., which is only a 2-hour drive away.
Mm-hmm.
And somehow they got his phone number in the middle of the night, woke him up, Maestro Dorati, Beethoven 9, no time for a rehearsal. You've done the piece. Please conduct it. And he said, well, do you have an assistant conductor? And they said, well, yeah. And he said, well, let him conduct. And I hung up on him. So you'll be conducting the Beethoven Symphony, the greatest symphony ever written, without a rehearsal at age 21. Mm-hmm. And then she said, and by the way, we have to tell the media something about you. So we're giving you the title of assistant conductor.
Mm.
So when you're 21, you're like Siegfried. You have no fear. I had no fear at all. And mind you, I'd been playing viola in the rehearsals. Mm-hmm. So I knew the tempi, I knew where he was in 4 and all that. And so the whole performance is like a dream. Everyone was pushing for me. And the next day, the reviews were like my mom wrote them from heaven. We lost our mom when I was 19 and Ralph was 18. So that was a big push. Nowadays, it'd be national news. But still, it did hit the East Coast. And that enabled me to get a job interview with the Baltimore Symphony.
Wow. Yeah. There's a lot there again. And I always think about that thing about preparedness and opportunity. And you had something about you where you said, I might do well to study Beethoven 9 tonight. And that moment came. How amazing. It makes me want to ask more about the race relations component of the work that we do and some of the experiences that you might have had. I mean, you know, I think for Black orchestral musicians, there's this shared understanding of we go through what we go through, but many times it's worth it because of the music that we get to play. Right. And there's nothing that's going to get in the way of our love for this genre and for this art form. And so I'm wondering, you know, what are some of the experiences that you'd be comfortable sharing as it relates to how you came to understand how this whole race thing works in classical music? Did it ever get in the way of your confidence and things like that? Yeah. What can you share as it relates to that?
Let me jump in there.
Story that I think I heard correctly from you, that yes, you did get this internship with the York Philharmonic, but there were some people in the orchestra that weren't happy about that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They had a meeting of the whole orchestra approximately a week or so before I arrived. And this was a pilot program. This had never happened anywhere before. And here they're going to be doing this. And there was an open orchestra meeting. I think it was actually the week that I joined the orchestra, Wednesday double rehearsals, and they had a rehearsal. They had a meeting in between the two rehearsals. And I was told, you might not want to be anywhere near there during this meeting. And I understand it was extremely heated, that a lot of members of the orchestra were extraordinarily upset that their orchestra, the New York Philharmonic, was being used as a training orchestra. We're not a training orchestra, we're professional musicians. It was only eased somewhat by the reality that I had been a finalist 2 months earlier. I had shown that I was qualified enough to play in the orchestra, and it didn't take long to prove that to the other cellists in the orchestra there. But that was the kind of thing that was thrown up at the time. But going back to the original question, going back to the Pittsburgh Youth Symphony, this was pretty much a picture of society at large. Approximately 10% of the orchestra was black, I would say. So this is where we saw other people look like us who were doing the same thing. Mm-hmm. I definitely remember, however, when we had, I was a senior in high school and we were having the guidance counselor meeting with the guidance counselor of the school, talking about what your plan is, where you planning on going to college and things like that. And I had already won a full scholarship to the Cleveland Institute of Music. And the guidance counselor said, well, okay. He said, what is it you want to do with that music degree? And I said, I'm going to play in a major orchestra somewhere. And he said, there aren't many of your kind in a major orchestra. And then I said, well, in the Pittsburgh Symphony, there are two. I said, there's Paul Ross and Patricia Prattis Jennings. I knew that they were there. They were my role models to prove that this was possible. And he said, the guidance counselor said, yeah, well, but you have to be really good to get in one of those. And I said, I am really good. And that was the way I approached things, is that our parents always hammered at us. You got to be better than everyone. This was almost a mantra of the family.
Yeah.
Don't be good, be the best.
Yeah.
And so this was what I expected of myself. And so that's the chip I carried on my shoulder all the way through college. Go ahead, try to knock me off the perch. And, quite honestly, people couldn't. So when you have that kind of confidence coming from inside, it really doesn't matter what people are even thinking or intimating about you. You just go ahead and do it and prove it with your acts.
Right on.
And David, I was oblivious to even the possibility of a glass ceiling, because everything for me was rising, and the civil rights era was over. And then Lauren Mazel, who hired Ralph to be in the Cleveland Orchestra, said, "You need management. I'll send you to Harold Shaw, who was then the manager of Vladimir Horowitz."
Mm-hmm.
Within 2 minutes, Harold Shaw, in his lovely place in Manhattan, said, "I can't do anything with a black conductor." That was the very first time I had even considered there might be a problem. Now I'm in the journey of writing my memoirs, and a lot of my life I've had to try to forget. But there's always, of course, minority paranoia and majority obliviousness, but I don't have to make up stories. The Jacksonville, Mississippi Symphony were on the verge of hiring me, and then the board said, "We can't do fundraising with a black music director." And then the executive director resigned in protest. I was interim music director of the New Orleans Symphony in 91. The brochures had already been distributed. Then the board said, "We can't have good fundraising with a black music director." My manager at the time, the late Ken Wentworth, said, "Well, Bill, you've got a lawsuit here, but you'll never work in this business again."
Wow.
So what happens to your self-esteem? What happens to your confidence? Some of this I just had to put blinders on, but some of it, for instance, this thing about having to be twice as good as the white person. Okay, that's a double-edged sword because that helps you cut your way through the world. But sometimes you feel extremely resentful. I can speak for myself. Why do I have to be twice as good?
Yeah.
Why can't y'all get it together and I be just equal?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's painful. It's ignorant. It's all of these things. And I sit here and feel the pain. It's hard to hear, but it's not the first time that we're hearing these types of stories. And unfortunately, it won't be the last time. So I hear you, and I can see and attest to the level of strength and fortitude that you both had to continue on regardless. That's power. That's true power. And one of the things I'm going to take from this conversation today is you know what? I don't think I'm going to let anyone knock me off my perch.
There you are.
I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna stand by my reads. I'm gonna stand by some of my interpretations. And of course, listen to my teachers and all the things like that. But the naysaying and the negative, non-constructive conversation, I won't listen to. I want to talk a little bit about some of the ways that you've seen maybe progress or change as it relates to, race, blackness, inclusivity in our world. What are some of the ways that you have seen change? What are some of the ways that you've participated in change, as whether it's community engagement or a protest or things of that nature? I'm just wondering about, what some of the things that you've maybe witnessed or seen through your career that, represents change.
You have to remember that we are of the in-between generation. We were not the firsts. We were the seconds who came through. I was fortunate enough to know Donald White very, very well. Now, Don White was a cellist in the Cleveland Orchestra. He was the first black member of one of the big five orchestras. And Don and I got to he happened to play cello, and only occasionally did we sit together, but we did spend some time together, and it was always very quiet, the way we discussed things. And I remember asking Don, what was it like? What was it like?
Yeah.
And he kind of said, man, he said it was really bad sometimes. That there were people in the orchestra who wouldn't talk to me. My first Southern tour with the orchestra was historic because George Sell, who was music director of the orchestra at the time, the orchestra was playing, I've forgotten what auditorium in the South, and Don came to the stage door, and they wouldn't let him in. No blacks allowed in here. So they immediately, the president of the orchestra, the general manager of the orchestra, and Sell got together, and Sell said, if he doesn't play, there will be no concert. So I got to know Don. So I joined the orchestra in 1978. Don had joined the orchestra in 56 or something like that. Now there's two. And it stayed two for, oh, good Lord, how long? 30 some years, perhaps. Then we hired a black violist in the orchestra, Alicia Nelson, who was a terrific player. Yeah. And then recently we hired Effendi Yusuf, who was our principal clarinetist. However, we are talking about a 45-year career at this point, and we've only increased it by a couple. Change is glacial. Sometimes it doesn't even happen at all in some places, but no one ever said this is going to be fast, but it has happened somewhat.
Yeah. And Ralph, you said something very important about when we were born. We were the second generation of people trying to break into classical music. I call our generation the assimilationist generation. We were told if you are good enough, you can join the inner circle. But then the Afrocentric movement, if you want to call it that, kicked in the late 60s. And for some people, for us to embrace Beethoven was to be a sellout. And I think, Ralph, you had some issues with that in high school, but kids can be cruel. So
yeah.
So this wasn't something that concerned me. I thought, there was no Bill Curry. There was a William Henry Curry, the musician. I was focused like a laser beam on conducting. And for me, I wrote in a 8th grade report in school, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I said, I want to be Leonard Bernstein. What I meant was, in his book, The Joy of Music, he said he wanted to compose, conduct, write poetry, teach, be an author. I don't know why I found that to be really attractive. But because I love music so much, I was curious about it all. If you were to visit my home, you'd see some 10,000 books. And I have read these books. But the curiosity gene is what Bernstein says sets you apart from certain people.
Wow. Yeah.
And as far as being an activist, I have a family. I have had 2, at the time, young children. My kids are long grown up now and incredibly successful. And I was so busy raising a family and being a role model for my family as a strong person, strong father, that this became the focus of my life. Being as good a cellist, as good a musician as I possibly could. I, at the same time, became deeply involved in orchestra committee work, the negotiating committees and things like that. I did God knows how many negotiating committees. I also became personnel manager of the orchestra for about a 10-year period in there. So I was deeply involved in things, trying to show people the right way to do things. And I can't say that it's my responsibility, other than just being myself, to be a role model. Pay attention and you will see the role model. Just as Paul Ross in the Pittsburgh Symphony was a role model to me. He just was there. I was able to understand how important this person could be for me as long as I was paying attention.
Yeah.
Well said. And David, I didn't really, frankly, there was a woman, a famous poet I knew in Indianapolis, and she said, what do you know about Frederick Douglass? I'm like 35 years old. And I say, who?
Oops, wrong answer.
I can still see her glaring face. Okay? I am William Henry Curry, the musician. Then I get a job in New Orleans. I had never seen Deep South racism.
Yeah.
That blew my ever-loving mind.
Yeah.
I knew a white University of New Orleans professor. I said, can I take you to lunch? And I want you to tell me some things. And we got to lunch. I said, why do these white people hate the blacks so much? He said, do you want the short answer or the long answer? Well, I'll give the short answer. He said, the whites really hate the blacks. Let's eat. It was a different kind of thing. It was a different kind of thing entirely. So all of a sudden, I become a researcher of Reconstruction. Ralph, I visited your home 30 years ago, and I saw several books in Reconstruction. And I never asked you why they were there, but I know why they were there. We both were asking in 1963 and 1964, excuse me, the Emancipation Proclamation was 100 years ago. Why did we still have to see colored and white drinking fountains? Why was interracial marriage still banned in about 16 states?
Yeah.
Why? You see, for us, it was not an option. For white folks, it's an option if they're curious. But for dare I say again, black intellectuals, for me, it was either find out the answer or become some kind of maniac.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can say that Bill and I, in our time away from music, is very interesting. It's something that when Bill and I talk, it tends to be about reminiscing about family or current events or music, those three things. However, in our time away from music, we both have read a great deal. And when Bill was at my house, and one of the things that he noticed, of course, was these books on history. And the way that I started, the era that I started reading first was Revolutionary War history. Because I was trying to figure out how these words in all these incredible documents could have been so perverted and distorted by the behavior of the people who wrote these words. I couldn't understand it. It's something I still don't understand. And Bill alluded to it when he was talking about New Orleans. And this was something that I just asked of myself, why are we still doing this? I don't understand why this is still going on. Have we not proven our worth yet? Unfortunately, the phrase Black Lives Matter got totally distorted because the lack of one word, Black Lives Matter too. That's really what it is. The biggest complaint has been all this time is that we're not just dirt under your feet. We matter as much as you two. Black Lives Matter too.
Yeah.
David, Ralph, you just mentioned these sacred words, that we were supposed to be living by, and justice for all. You might remember the infamous Pledge of Allegiance scandal at Lincoln Park Elementary School. We had gone to Gettysburg, the Smithsonian. We had been to Mount Vernon, where our father was given a racial slur. I can tell it briefly. We were at Mount Vernon, and it was a tour. And then we passed the slave cabins, and our dad had a sense of humor. And you couldn't go in, but you could look in through a door. And he said, wow, they're living better than us. And a white man sat next to him, and I wish you were still there.
Whoa.
So I didn't hear this, but I knew Dad shut down for the rest of the day. I said, Mom, what's with Dad today? And she told me what had happened. So when I went back to school after this experience, stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance and justice, liberty and justice for all, I wouldn't stand. I refused to stand. I was told you'll be thrown out of school. My mom said, stand, but just move your lips. You can curse if you want. So that's the beginning of my activist journey that was truncated and didn't reappear again until I was 40.
Wow. Yeah, you never know how, for each Black person, how they step into their consciousness, how they step into that embodying of what their Blackness is. And yeah, I mean, I grew up at a time where, I mean, still, like, for me to love Brahms or to love Tchaikovsky was cozying up to the whites in an interesting way that people, weren't so happy about. But yeah, I hear these stories and it's just so interesting to me.
But one of the things that I find interesting about Bill himself is his incredible love affair with Wagner. And we all know Wagner was a very imperfect person. That's probably being as gentle as possible with the situation. And yet, it is possible to hate the sin but love the sinner. And therein lies part of the problem, is that a lot of these people, the music we play, had, of course, no idea that a black person may exist, even though Beethoven wrote the Kreutzer Sonata for a black violinist. This is the cross we do have to bear. The love we have for this music makes it worth it, because it's about the music. It's about the music.
Yeah.
Yes. And David, like I said, I'm writing my memoirs, so I'm forced to return to the scene of the crimes and the triumphs.
Yeah.
And I feel like I'm on a mountain now, and I can survey my whole life with objectivity.
Mm-hmm.
And as James Baldwin said, if you enter a profession as a calling, an enunciation, eventually you will find out the dark side.
Yeah.
And that's a shattering moment. I've always known this country disliked its American conductors, but there is no American conductor of the top 20 or 30 orchestras as music director.
Yeah.
And as John Mauceri said in his memoirs, he was told once, you're by far the most qualified for the job, but we really want the accent.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to wonder whether I want to give whatever is remaining to me in my life to a group, a whole world in a sense, that discriminates against American conductors who lack the accent. The people that hire these people, these carpetbaggers, I did say it, didn't I, are board of directors people, and they know the audience. Oh, look, we're little in Williamsport, and our conductor's from Yugoslavia. Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
So really, I decided 5 years ago, I want to die a person of integrity. Mm-hmm. I started to be a musician of integrity for sure in the middle 90s. So I satisfied that urge. Mm-hmm. But so as I look at this profession that is discriminated against me, not only as a black person, but an American, I'm through with it. Yeah. What I really want to do is join with you and other black organizations and help the black youth, because this era, we're going to see this era continue for a few more years. In fact, I guess a whole generation. So guess what? As Mom used to say when I was complaining, then do something about it. Yeah. And so I want to help those that are the most vulnerable right now. And the ones I love the most are black classical players by any means necessary.
That's a word. Yeah. That brings me to one of the last questions that I was going to ask. And basically it's a question about a word of advice or values for the upcoming generation. What are some words or principles that you like to live by that you want to impart onto the up and coming generation?
My advice has always been, do the work. Do the work. In that you have to practice. I'm sorry, you have to practice. You have to make reads. You have to do these things that you'd rather be, reading, or maybe you'd rather be out taking a walk or hiking or something like that. But you have to pay attention to your craft. And that's the most important thing, is it's a decision to not practice. Mm-hmm. It's a decision to go do something else. And I've always said that maybe that day that you didn't practice, or you chose not to practice, would be that day something would have happened. You would have changed something in your playing. That was once again, we've been talking a lot about the light bulb moment. The light bulb sometimes happens. And if you didn't practice that day, you may have missed the light bulb.
Mm. I knew a cellist that said he practiced always on Christmas Day, too, because they figured no one else is practicing, so he's one day ahead of everyone.
There you go. Got to do the work.
We all know young people are depressed in a way that our hearts ache for them. So as leaders, yes, we have to say positive things that we also believe are the truth. Mm-hmm. So one of my heroes is Franklin Delano Roosevelt, golden boy, beautiful, wealthy. He was going to be president. His uncle Theodore, of course, was president, the most popular president after Lincoln. And then one day around 35, he woke up, he would never walk again. how do you get from that moment to be governor of New York and the most important president of the 20th century? Optimism, and he refused to give up.
Mm.
And so when he delivered his final inaugural address, he knew he was dying. This is in 1945. And he had given away some of his possessions to his son, Junior, who sensed, what's going on here, Dad? Oh, I'm fine. But he knew he only had a few months to live. So when he gave this address, he knew, unlike few Americans, about the Holocaust. And so it's perhaps the shortest inaugural address ever. He certainly was too weak to deliver it in person. I don't know whether he did, but there's one passage I just love. And this is so personal. We all know about script writers. But you can't tell me someone wrote this. I remember that my old schoolmaster, Dr. Peabody, said, in days that seemed to be then to be secure and untroubled, things in life will not always run smoothly. Sometimes we will be racing towards the heights. Then all will seem to reverse itself and start downward. The great fact to remember is that the trend of civilization itself is forever upward, that a line drawn through the middle of the peaks and the valleys of the centuries always has an upward trend. I think Martin Luther King said something similar about that. So this is a fallback era. Mm-hmm. We know this from living through eras that were never considered to be peaceful, but trying to drag me back to 1954, I mean, and this is what happened to me. Born a month after Brown versus Board of Education. 1964, the Republicans nominate Barry Goldwater, who voted against the Civil Rights Act. I'm listening to this. There are a lot of kids listening right now. They're 10 years old and learning the wrong things and the right things. But nonetheless, I did see gays in the military. I did see gays allowed to be married, interracial marriage. I saw a black president elected twice. I saw a female presidential candidate. And then this is what I did in 2015. I said, oh, Lord, I have done seen the promised land. All the fights are over. Thank you. Thank you, Jesus. And then what happened? So this is like you feel well, then you're sick, and then you feel well again. Oh, great, I'm fine now. And then the relapse. The relapses are painful. Yeah. And this is, for me, very, very painful, this era. But now I've decided, hey, look, we see where this is going. So there's no more pretense. There's no more self-delusion. And as Mom would say, do something about it. I can't do anything about this tsunami of hatred, but I can help Black musicians feel they merit a place in this industry.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. Thank you both. This was powerful. And just a remarkable time. I've loved getting to connect with both of you and witness just there's just so much love between the both of you that I'm feeling and I'm picking up on, and that's reminding me of my brother and I love him so much. And so, yeah, I just want to thank you for this time. And thank you for being guests on Black Music Scene.
Thank you. Great questions. I mean, Ralph, he didn't ask the question, were your parents musicians too? I mean,
yeah, we've heard that occasionally.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Brilliant.
It's an absolute pleasure working with you today.
Black Music Scene is written and produced by David Norville, with assistance from Emilio Carlo and Shania Watts. Editing and sound design by David Norville and Cam Cook. This work is supported in part by the Mellon Foundation and the New York State Council on the Arts. Black Music Scene is a product of the Black Orchestral Network. Learn more at blackorchestralnetwork.org.